Today is going to be a good day. I'm going to introduce you to two lovely ladies who are now a part of our Prince George's Hospice team, the Amber team, which is Renee. She's our chaplain, and Renee has over 20 years of experience as a chaplain. During some of her time as a chaplain, she's been a director of health, and she's also been a pastor of health ministry in some of the local churches in the area. Also, Trayvon, she spent 15 years thus far as being a social worker. And some of the things that she's done during her time as a social worker, she's worked in an acute setting. She's worked in a rehab setting and worked on a ventilator unit. And now she is with hospice, Montgomery Hospice and Prince George's Hospice. So welcome, ladies. I'm going to jump right in and ask Trayvon. The message for you is, what are people struggling with during this difficult time during COVID-19?
Trayvon, go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, great. We can hear you now. Awesome.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Terry. So some of the things that people have expressed, some things I've heard from patients and families, they've expressed feelings of uncertainty regarding the future due to just not knowing what's coming next. And some people, families have expressed concerns regarding basic needs for items such as food for their families or children, and also how to get information, and also updates regarding COVID-19 and the pandemic. And so I want to encourage people that they can go to the Prince George's Hospice website, where they can find some of the information regarding these resources. And also they can get some of the updates on the COVID-19 on the Prince George's website.
That's great information. What are the most concerns your patients and families are having right now?
Terry, I would definitely say that people are separated from their loved ones. So I often hear from, patients and families alike that they're just feeling anxiety and loneliness, right?
Mm-hmm.
That feeling of not being able to be with your loved one, whether they're in a nursing facility or, ALF or a group home, and they can't see them or touch them due to the social distancing. So it's that loneliness and anxiety and the feeling of uncertainty.
I can imagine, and that goes for all of us right now. It is a difficult time. Renee, can you talk about the range of spiritual issues people are having during this time and of social distancing? What are some of the spiritual issues that you are noticing in families?
Yes, there's a wide range of spiritual issues that we have to deal with during this social distancing. One is many of the sacred activities and things or rituals that persons are accustomed to, they're not getting a chance to engage in as far as with a congregation in and of itself. An example is kneeling at the altar. That's a definitely very sacred, personal time for persons, and not to be able to do that, in a sanctuary is a major change for many people. The same with regular communion, being able to be it monthly or weekly, that some congregations do it. Either or is something that is missed when people don't get a chance to engage with the pastor or the priest and make that or engage in that type of ritual. It for some, it takes away the meaning to not have it take place at all. It takes away some of their spirituality and brings discomfort. And another one is the baptism. Baptism is very important to persons, the whole concept of cleansing and replenishing, and to not be able to do it, although some people actually do it by way of sprinkling, there are many who believe in actual immersion, and to not be able to engage in that in a sacred place brings discomfort to people. But I'm very glad that we were able to assist one of our patients with that recently, in that in spite of her physical challenges that she's encountering, still had been longing for quite a period of time to be baptized, and gotten the opportunity. And, at this time in her life, it's a very strong desire of hers, a wish. And when she shared that with me, I began to brainstorm about how that could possibly take place. And I communicated with other chaplains just to see how we could bring that to fruition. And after, talking to her about it and allowing her to, think about it, what she would be pleased with taking place, we were able to come up with a plan where we would do baptism by way of Zoom, on the internet. So what I did was we had some water from the River Jordan that we were able to take to her home, and her daughter would actually sprinkle it on her when we're going through our sacred ceremony and do the whole process of the baptism. And we were able to engage in that. She really enjoyed it. She was grateful that we had, really done brainstorming to figure out how her needs could really get met. And although she was not able to go through the immersion that she had anticipated, we had spoken enough about spirituality for this method to have the same type of effect. And another thing that she added as we were preparing for it was that she wanted last rites to be added to that, the baptismal ceremony. And of course, we were more than happy, for her request, and we did just that, did the last rites as a part of the baptismal ceremony. So it ended up going quite well. She and her family, her daughters who were there at the ceremony, with her, they really enjoyed it. And that's how we have to do in this time of social distancing, try to confirm other alternatives to allow people's sacred needs to still get met.
That is great. That is really, really wonderful. That is almost a follow-up to the question that I was going to ask you as far as encouraging patients and family. And that was a piece of encouragement and actually a new ritual, because so many of our rituals during this time, we've had to stop. So that was great work. Trayvon, I'm going to come back to you and ask you, tell me a little bit about your role working together as a team to provide hospice care during this time.
Definitely, Terry. So as a social worker, I collaborate with the hospice team and I help the family to navigate through these definitely difficult conversations. And often we talk about things that are very difficult to talk about, such as advanced care planning and funeral planning. And so those can be very tough conversations for individuals, the patients, and the families to have. I also help the families to navigate through family conflict and those tough family dynamics. I also provide community resources and also funeral resources, to assist the patients and the families, if they're open to receiving that information.
And there's a message right now in the chat box, and the question was, this person attended their first YouTube funeral this morning for one of our hospice patients and wanted to know, have we assisted with doing any of those? Renee, can you answer that? So far, I don't think we have, but that doesn't mean that we won't eventually have to do that as we did with the Zoom.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with any YouTube funerals, but like you say, it is a high possibility, very likely, that we will be engaging in doing it that way also.
Okay. So in what ways, Renee, does a chaplain help address their concerns right now? Tell us a little story on some instances that you had to really bring the family together with some of these stressing times and maybe reflect on some things that's been going on.
Yeah, as far as these difficult times, there are different ways that we can, help family deal with these matters. And one that is very important is be able to do the assessments and know what their specific needs are as far as their spirituality. Some are very gung-ho when it comes to rituals and that type of things. And reflecting on their spirituality is of utmost importance. Things that have meaning to them. So being able to reflect on their spirituality by way of prayers. There are certain prayers that people really do like, certain songs of comfort that they like. So being able to reflect on their individual spirituality. Another means is checking on them regularly. We like to do that because, again, knowing someone cares or is concerned about your overall well-being, it definitely has an impact on your overall peace and comfort, that you are obtaining. So checking in regularly with them and their families and allowing open dialogue if they, have a need for that, or if that's a good time for it. That's very important as well. And we also engage in life review. Sometimes just looking at your past and reflecting, enjoying, things that you've accomplished in life. We definitely have open minds and open hearts to lead them to that point if that's what they want to do. Be able to reflect on, be it their career that they've been, just profound or very proud of, be it, just something going on in their family that they've encountered. Could be their marriage, could be their first child or only child, could be many things, but being able to reflect and review aspects of their lives that really has had impact. And we had an awesome encounter with one of our patients who actually happened to mention a manuscript that he had because he'd been wanting to write a book. And when he mentioned about the manuscript, you know what I mean, and how he had been working on it for a while and was hoping that he would get a chance to publish it, that just kind of opened up the doors, to let us really go in and communicate with him about his wish and, you know what I mean, give him comfort in the process. So what I did was ask open-ended questions about it to kind of help him share the dialogue, gave him reassurance. And, he even talked about, editing and all this still needed a little bit to be able to eventually be published. And I said, when you're feeling good and feel like you're capable of doing that, utilize that time well. And if you're able to go in and do some editing, feel free to do so, because again, it could bring peace and comfort to you. So believe it or not, openly engaging in dialogue about it was beneficial to him as well as us, that were there for him. It developed a strong relationship. And believe it or not, it gave him hope. That there was still something great in store for him. So we really like to engage, meet people where they are and help them be able to reflect in a way that's beneficial to them.
Absolutely, that's good. And I'm sure that gave him the opportunity to really reflect on his life, to see how meaningful his life is or was to him and his family. So that's a great piece that you were able to help him with at the end of life. Trayvon, I'm going to come to you now, because this is a time that we should really, if we haven't already, we need to know the importance of an advanced directive. So I'm asking you to please share with us about Advanced Directive and the importance of it.
Definitely, Terry. So it's definitely important for a person to have an advance directive, because a person will want to have their wishes carried out. A person wouldn't want something done to their body that they wouldn't want. And so first, the question would be, what is an advance directive? So an advance directive is a legal document that specifies what, a person would want for their health should something happen to them if they become ill or incapacitated. So why is it important to have an advance directive right now? It's very important because if a person doesn't tell a friend or a loved one what they want, then like I said, something, could be done to them that they don't want. So now is the time to talk to people and let them know, what you would or would not want done, so somebody can advocate for you should you become ill or incapacitated and you couldn't make decisions for yourselves. So, and that's important because you want to express what are your goals of care, like what are you trying to do if something were to happen to you and you became ill. So that's very important.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And so much is going on right now. And sometimes those are the things that we don't want to address, but it's always best to address it. And one thing I've heard people talk about is the different terminology that the advanced care planning has in, the paperwork. And it can be very difficult for people to fill out. And I know that a lot of people need a lot of help in doing that. Share with us, Trayvon, how you guide people through filling out their advanced directives.
Definitely, Terry. So you're right. It's very complicated. I mean, there's different advanced directives, from the actual advanced directive form to the most that's complicated. And one thing I often hear the patients and the families say, oh, this is so complicated. This is too much medical terminology. So when I'm explaining it with the families, I talk to them the way I would talk to my friends or my loved one or my family. So I try to break it down and I talk to them and take out all that medical terminology and jargon, and I try to just explain it the way I would, like I said, a friend or a family member. And so I also try to be very non-judgmental. And the most important thing is I want to make sure they understand what I'm saying to them. And I don't judge them, and I want them to make the decision that they feel comfortable, and I explain that to them. And how do I make sure they understand? I get them to repeat, what I'm saying. So that's very important. And I don't rush. I take my time with them. And so I find that if you're non-judgmental, and a lot of times people will ask me, oh, what would you do? And then it's a great way I ask them, no, this isn't about me, because I'm making my decision, you need to make your decision. And so when people find that they're not judged, or you're not gonna, judge them, then they tend to be more open and honest with you. And also that, you're not making them feel like, oh, this is a silly or stupid question. I just explain to them, you need to do what's best for you, and you're the one who has to live with this decision. So you take your time and you ask all the questions. And I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with this decision. And people are a lot more honest with it.
That's great. And I must read what one of the participants had said regarding advanced care planning, because there's so much surrounding about that. And they had said, making an advanced directive is not only a gift for yourself, it is very much a gift for your families.
Yes.
And that is so right. Sometimes those are situations that we don't want to talk about, but it is a situation that we really should talk about, and it's a must. And to make families comfortable enough to make that happen, and to fill those papers out by letting them know that you're here for them, you're not judging, that's great. Because it can be a difficult piece of paper to have to fill out, and information that they have to give. It makes them think on what's to come, but it's still very important. So to the one of the panel, to one of the participants who wrote that, thank you very much. I'm going to move on now to Renee, and I'd like to ask you, what brought you to become a hospice chaplain? And this is, the rest of our questions are going to be kind of a twofold. So I'm going to pose this question to you first, Renee, to ask you, what was your calling to become a hospice chaplain?
What actually brings me to my calling as a hospice chaplain is that I have a passion for rendering support to the sick. Sometimes that's spiritual support, but that could be, moral support as well. There was a time in my life when I was very ill, and the support that I needed at that time was not easy to obtain. As much as people, members of my church and other family and friends attempted to render support, sometimes it was it was missing what I actually needed at that time. And as much as we don't realize it, sometimes the simple things that we can do for persons who are challenged with health issues or end-of-life issues, some of those things can have a profound effect. So just being able to have a supportive heart, an open mind, where you can render the support that's needed is very important. And what led me to do that was seeing that I didn't get it at the time, and there might be others out here that didn't need it. So reaching out to them in different ways is what I began to do. And I started, a support group, for persons with a specific illness. And that was very helpful to them to come and dialogue about what was going on. And then from that, I expanded and became director of a health ministry at a local church for several years. And even while in seminary, actually became pastor of health for a few years at a local church. And the whole concept was starting to minister to people who were ill and at end of life, meaning not just in the hospital, but being able to go to their homes and their bedside and to be there and be supportive. I found to be very beneficial, and that is what has led me to be here serving as a chaplain at Prince George's Hospice, and just the outreach that we've been able to do in meeting the needs of persons at this challenging time in their lives has been very, very rewarding. And I call it, moral support, the spiritual support, the friendship, great companionship, all of that can come just by reaching out and meeting them where they are. So that's been a great experience as far as my calling.
Okay, great. That sounds good. And that, I'm sure once you had gotten your care and you saw the need of some things that was missing and needed to be done better, that gives you more passion to do your job. Sometimes we are placed in positions that um, will allow us to do what we do better. So that's what it sounds like happened with you. What about you, Trayvon?
Well, Terry, I remember I was working in the hospital on a ventilator unit, and I was working with many patients that were on a ventilator, and they also had many medical issues along with being on a ventilator. And unfortunately, I saw many of the patients pass away. And after declining, and they struggled for a long time, and I often saw the families had to make many difficult decisions. And a lot of the families had to make the difficult decision of whether to take their loved one off the ventilator or to leave them on the ventilator. And so I saw when the patient did finally pass away, you know, it was a not so peaceful death. And then also I saw the families struggle. So it was just a lot of torment and struggling. But I remember seeing hospice come on the unit a couple times. And I remember when the patient finally passed away on hospice, it was just very different. The patient passed away peacefully. And also, I remember how hospice brought comfort to the family. And so it was just way different from when the patient on the ventilator struggled and they just went on and on and on, and then the family was suffering. But hospice, when the hospice came, the patient passed away, you know, peacefully. They weren't in pain, and then they also brought comfort to the patient. So it was at that time that I then developed the love for hospice, because then I saw a different way that, oh, you know, the patient can be in, you know, comfortable, and also the family can get comfort too.
That's great. That's really good. And that is why it is so important that we, as much as possible, educate the community. We've never had any families in Montgomery Hospice or Prince George's Hospice to talk about that they always talk about they wish they would have come earlier. So as long as we keep doing what we're doing with the Center for Learning and all the education that we do in the community, just those things that the both of you have been talking about is what we continuously need to do and get everybody to understand that. That's great. Thank you so much. How does families cope? How do we cope with our families during the time that the family has a patient, or that we have a patient, I'm sorry, who's declining? How do you all help the families during this time?
Well, we definitely have to be sure that we approach it from an individual perspective, because, you know, individuals have different needs. And one thing is that I help families be able to communicate about what is going on, so that they can have a better understanding of what is taking place and cope with it more effectively. Try to help persons be sure that their spiritual desires, their needs are getting met. That's also important, because if that's not the case, then of course there can be some hostility or just discomfort, you know, because of uncertainties. So just trying to be sure that their spiritual desires or wishes are being met, that helps them to cope more so spiritually with what they're encountering. To be able to have open dialogue and help persons talk about, you know, what's going on. You know, you'd be amazed at the instances where people don't want to talk about what they are encountering, or what their family member is encountering, or their friend is encountering, because it's a challenge. It creates emotional challenges overall. So a lot of times they don't want to deal with this. So trying to find means of helping those who are capable talk about what's going on. In ministry, we call it facing the giant, so that you can learn to overcome the giant, you know what I mean, and not necessarily be defeated. And an important thing that, you know, a lot of times persons don't think of as having great value is being able to listen to persons and their concerns, not being judgmental or anything like that, but, you know, being open-minded, where we can listen and help persons share their concerns, can be very comforting to them as well. And then another, last but not least, is the power of presence. Very simple, the power of presence, just being able to be there in their company, them hear your voice or something like that. The isolation and things like that can create intense loneliness. And also just the presence has great value right now. If a person's never thought of it before, think about it now, because this is a time when, even letting someone hear your voice or see your face can lessen some of the isolation and let you have impact by just being present with them for a little while. So those type of things can help people cope spiritually with what they're encountering.
And Trayvon, how are you helping families cope during the time that the patient is declining, especially now when we are not able to visit depending on circumstances? I know we have to do a lot of phone calls and different things like that. So how are you able to help out when they're declining?
Yeah. So people often have a wide reaction, right? A wide spectrum of reaction. Some people have a sense of relief that their loved one is going to be getting close to passing and that they're no longer going to be suffering. Some people are in denial, and then some people get upset. So as a social worker, one thing that I do, even over the phone, even though we're no longer doing the face-to-face visits, I'm still able to do this over the phone, is I try to prepare families for the decline from the beginning of the hospice admission. I refer the families to the Prince George's Patient Family Handbook. And in that book, it has the signs and symptoms of decline. So I go over that with the family members. And so the purpose of that is to make them aware of some of the things that, may be coming. So regardless of which stage they're at, I meet them at the stage they're at and, accept it. I don't try to force anything on them, but that book is there. So they're aware of this may be coming down the road. She did tell me about this, so when they see those signs and symptoms, it's not new. It's not alarming. It's okay, regardless of what stage they're at, this is concrete. Yes, I see this. It's in front of me. Also, I provide them with information and resources, funeral and cremation resources, if they're able or ready to accept it. So once again, from the beginning, if they're ready, so they have information when they're ready to look at it. So
That's good.
From the beginning.
That's good. In the handbook, with it being there and you guiding them through and sharing with them what's expected, because a lot of times during this time you forget, you can easily forget with so much going on. I'd like to address one of the participants. I have a question for you, Renee. And in addition to connecting with the patients through calls, I'm sorry, I have the wrong one before it's left. Someone had a question about, can you please guide us when they are not a Christian? How do we approach the subject of encouraged on a spiritual level? So when someone is not a Christian, how do you handle the patient and the families doing that when there's someone who's not Christian?
Yeah. If they're not Christian, they could have another belief system. So trying to identify what their beliefs are can be very helpful. Knowing the person, what they believe in, can help give you insight on, what you need to do to meet their needs. Some people don't have spiritual beliefs at all. So being able to still, be there for them and not only base it on what their spiritual belief is, but just being there to render the moral support, as well, can be very helpful. So again, determining if it's not spirituality, what is very important to them and how can you help them obtain comfort by engaging in what is important to them or dialoguing about what is important to them. So again, it doesn't have to be, only from the Christian perspective or only from a spiritual perspective, but trying to determine what is most important to them and then meeting them where they are in order to meet their need.
Okay. I also have another question. This is a question from Rachel. She wants to know, our families wanted to speak with you more because they can't be with their families right now. Have you all, either one of you all experienced that you noticed that the families are wanting to talk to you more since we're not being able to speak to them in person?
there have been instances where, you know, I can't say that that's always the case, but there have been instances where, you know, we have times, you know, we call, check on them, see how they're doing and that type of thing. And there have been several instances when I've called persons be the time that they needed to communicate, to dialogue about something that might have happened that morning or that week or whatever the case is, and were very happy, thanked me, you know, for the call. So a lot of times we don't know if they have a specific need when we're calling, but again, to just make the phone visits regular helps them know that we're available to them if needed. And, you know, sometimes, you know, they can be in an excellent time when they've been stressed that morning or something, they need to talk. And then other times, you know, it might not be a you know, strong need at that particular time. So the point is availability, being there, contacting them, communicating with them on a regular basis where they can express their needs if necessary. And if not, then so be it. You know, you can call them at a different time.
Okay. All
When
right.
they're ready.
Okay, thank you so much. And we are winding down. And if you all like to stay online for questions, we can do that as well. But I do want to mention one more other thing, and for Renee and Trayvon to share with us the different areas that we as Montgomery Hospice and Prince George's Hospice also offer other ways of supporting. Could you share that with us, Trayvon, in other areas and different disciplines and what we do at Montgomery and Prince George's Hospice?
Yes, definitely. So families definitely, when a patient is admitted to hospice, the family will be supported by a hospice care team that will consist of a hospice social work, a chaplain, and also a nurse. Families can contact a member of the primary care team regarding their needs as we work together as a team. The family will also be able to call hospice 24/7 to reach a nurse who is able to make a visit to the patient if needed. Montgomery Hospice and Prince George's Hospice also has a volunteer department that is normally able to provide companionship to sit with a patient for a few hours to allow caregiver to run errands. But as you know, however, at this time, volunteers are not providing in-home visits due to social distancing, due to the pandemic. However, we'd like to encourage families and patients to go to the Montgomery Hospice and Prince George's website, and they can watch some of the Take 5 videos presented by the volunteer department for ways to support themselves and their families during this time.
Okay, thank you. And our time is up, but we do plan on to have little short series like this throughout, especially since we're distancing right now. So at this time, I'd like to thank everyone for joining, and thank you, Trayvon, and thank you, Renee. We're looking forward to continuing these series. And now I would turn everything back over to Beza and hope it was helpful to everyone.
Thank you so much, ladies. I hope for everyone this was valuable to you. I do want to be mindful of your time. We did go a little bit over, but you had some fantastic questions that you were asking. You were engaged in the comments. So I'm very pleased that you were able to kind of engage in the dialogue. I did type it in the chat box, but if you'd like to receive a follow-up email with some resources, I think some people were sharing some resources on advanced directives. I thank you for that. But Montgomery Hospice also has just a whole array of resources that would be beneficial to you during this time, including Dr. Aziz's book, a link to his blog. Dr. Aziz has written a book on how to have courageous conversations about advanced care planning with patients and families. And he actually talks about it as a way of a gift. Someone mentioned that it is a gift. So if you want to receive those resources, go ahead and type your email address in the chat box. I would also want to tell you a few things that are coming up through the Center for Learning. Next week, we're going to have our last webinar in the series of how COVID is affecting communities of color. It would be on how it's affecting the Asian community. We have Dr. Sam and Kate Liu from CCACC joining us in that dialogue. So hopefully we would see you in that next week as well. And then on Friday, we have a program for our certificate in end-of-life care candidates. We have over almost 300 candidates right now pursuing the program. And if you're interested in signing up for it, it's very simple. All you have to do is just show interest and we'll be able to add you to our list. It is a 10-course program. If you're looking to get a wholesome and a whole-rounded education on in-depth life care and palliative care, that's the program for you. It's very affordable. So there's 3 A's: affordable, accessible, and available. All our programs are provided online and in person. Now that we can't do in-person programs, we have evolved into the online platform. So most of them would be offered online. We do hope to graduate our 2nd cohort in September if we're able to provide these online educations. So if you want to hear more about it and want to check out our website, I'll be able to share that with you in our follow-up email. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'm just going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.